Siri Lord, what's going on? Welcome back to Walking Dead Vlog. It's been a while since I've actually done one of these. There we go. The camera was actually a little off-centered there. I guess today's sponsor is American Eagle, since I'm wearing their shirt. I sometimes don't realize when I, unintentionally sponsor brands, considering the people that'll watch this video from time to time. Anyway, to get into the topic today, we're talking about when do I personally think that The Walking Dead will end as a show? How many seasons? What will the events be? The circumstances? Will Rick Grimes be alive? A lot to think about. So, this is definitely hard to say because for another entertainment-based show that follows material, written material. So we're talking Game of Thrones. With Game of Thrones, we know that there's only 2 more books that should be released. Book 6 has been in development hell forever. I don't know what George R. R. Martin's doing, but it's been taking forever for this book to come out. But we know that there's 2 more books concretely, and we also know that there's 2 more seasons of Game of Thrones concretely. Season 7 coming out this summer, and Season 8 the summer after. After that, the show will end. I know HBO just announced a whole bunch of freaking prequels to milk the cash cow on Game of Thrones. I guess they'd kind of be stupid not to do that, but I mean, that's still cool. I hope they do something about the War of the Mad King. That's always something I'd like to see. They've unveiled certain actors from that era in flashbacks in Season 6, so I think they have potential to do it. But anyway, we know that there's an end goal with Game of Thrones. Basically, if anyone knows Game of Thrones, not to throw in too many spoilers out here, but basically, once somebody concretely gets control of the Iron Throne, and or when the White Walkers are defeated, that will basically be the end of Game of Thrones. Okay? Now, we don't know the specific circumstances of who will live and who will die, but we know that the White Walkers will probably be defeated in some dramatic, heroic form by either Jon Snow or Daenerys, or one of our heroes that's left will probably be defeated in some magnificent fashion. Many of the enemy factions that we have left will probably be killed off, and some type of peace will be restored to Westeros. We know this from Game of Thrones. With Walking Dead, it's tough, because the show doesn't really have any end goal in mind, and for some people, this is why they don't like the show. My brother is actually one of them. My brother watches a bunch of different TV shows, like Game of Thrones, and he says this argument to me constantly with The Walking Dead. He says that because there's no concrete end goal for the show, he's often turned off by the concept of it because he feels like it's a lot of meandering with no real purpose in mind. Now, the big reason I love The Walking Dead is because it deals with the human psyche through various experiences that are all different, okay? And I'm the first to call out the show when it sometimes repeats formulas or repeats thematic elements, but I think that what we've had every season has been different. Currently, what we're in with Negan's Saviors, we've never seen a group, an adversary this big. We've never had Rick defeated by an adversary. Sure, the governor was a villain and pressured Rick's group, but Rick always had control of the prison and always was able to make a stand against the governor. Negan's the first villain that actually physically brought Rick to his knees. Rick's people died in front of him. It's the worst kind of villain possible, all right? This is basically setting up a circumstance where Negan is the end-all, be-all villain, all right? So, the experiences have varied, and every season of the show is different. It offers some different type of formula of what's going on. Each season has a different theme. Each half season has a different theme. Scott Gimple has said this. Every 8 episodes, the show reinvents itself. The first 8 episodes of Season 7 was Rick being subjugated by Negan. The next 8 episodes was Rick rising up and trying to build up an army of arsenals of supplies and people in order to fight back against Negan. Now, Season 8 will be the actual fight, the actual war, conflict battle. I don't know if it'll be resolved in 8 episodes. That would seem quick to end. I feel like the entirety of All Out War will be Season 8. I feel like Negan will be defeated by the end of Season 8. The Season 8 finale, that'll happen. That's just my prediction going into it. I'll have a Season 8 prediction sometimes later, but that's just generally what I think. As most people know, the show is based off of the comic books by Robert Kirkman. The comic books did come out first, just like the books for Game of Thrones came out before the show. The same thing with The Walking Dead. Now, The Walking Dead is embarking upon issue 169 or 170, all right? That's every... the first week of every month, a new comic book issue comes out. And now I follow these very closely online. I'll look at the wiki. I'll follow them on the readonline.com. They'll have different full issues that get printed. You can buy them. Obviously, I encourage people to buy them. And where the story... I don't want to spoil too much with where the comics are at because they're pretty far beyond... Sorry, my nose is itching me for some reason. The comics is far beyond where the show is right now, but not too much, not too far beyond. After Negan's defeated, there is a time skip, okay? There is a time skip in The Walking Dead by like 2 years, and then there's another group that jumps in as an adversary, and now they're kind of in limbo right now, and Rick is rebuilding what happens after that group attacks, and there's different dynamics with different people. Some characters are lost. You know, it's the usual. Some Walking Dead characters die. There's some climactic battles. There's some inner conflicts. You see the human psyche at work. But they're still in Alexandria. As of issue 169, 170, they are still in Alexandria. The other communities are standing in some sense. Hilltop, you know, there's been some, again, spoilers a little bit, but there have been some conflicts that have kind of damaged some of these communities, like the Kingdom and the Hilltop. They're still standing, quote unquote, but there is some rebuilding that needs to happen. But for the most part, Alexandria still exists as of issue 170. And it still exists in the TV show as of episode 100 / the season 8 premiere, which will be coming out this October. So that doesn't give us any indication of where the show's going. You could say that the show is stagnant right now. You could say that. And because right now the show is riding a bit of a high wave. And it had been with Negan. I think that killing Glenn and Abraham, I mean, the way in which they went, the cliffhanger death, you kind of lost some audience members with that. I've always been, after it happened and when it was going on, at the moment when the cliffhanger happened, I was very frustrated. But after the fact, I kind of justified it. But I'm still kind of on the edge. I think it was done a bit poorly how they did the cliffhanger, and it cost them some viewers. The momentum froze in that moment. And I think if you had The Day Will Come When It Won't Be, the Season 7 premiere, I think if you had that as the Season 6 finale, it would have been a bit more impactful, just in my opinion. Leaving people over an entire summer to grieve those deaths rather than guess the death would have been far better. Now, I'm not here to reminisce about the past and tell Scott Gimple and the producers how to do their jobs. All I'm saying is that the show's viewership, as I talked about on another vlog, hasn't been at the highest. I think some people are realizing that the show could become stagnant. Especially, there are many different communities now. Again, you've got the Hilltop, the Kingdom, Alexandria, Oceanside's there, the Saviors. You've got 5 or 6, and you've got these trash people, garbage people, which we don't have a name for them yet, Jadis's group. That group is not in the comic books, neither is the Oceanside. So some groups are new. Entirely new for the show. We have a lot of them. And a lot of the issues that people had with Season 7, as I've already talked about, is that the show didn't really give each person ample time. Entire episodes would be dedicated to one community. People would call it bottle episodes. A bottle episode meaning that it's just focused on one area entirely. So that way the plot is slow moving and it feels stagnant. So where will The Walking Dead eventually be? Where will it hit? Well, I feel like the show right now is about Rick Grimes rebuilding civilization. And once Negan's defeated, I think Rick Grimes is going to explain these ideologies to Negan. Right now, he's a dictator, and I think that Rick defeating the dictator and trying to show a different way for the dictator will be the way of the future. Obviously, I know some of how the war against Negan unfolds in the comics, so I do have a bit more forethought on the matter. However, I still think that the way the show will end will be Rick restoring some amount of civilization. I think he will have to sacrifice himself in some form. I would like to see Judith and Carl grow up a little bit. We've seen them grow up already through the course of 7 seasons, but I think that we'll see more of them growing up. I hope that Judith can start walking and talking and actually engaging with other characters. That'd be great. To have her from episode 2 when she was conceived with Shane and Laurie to now being born through in season 3 and now, surviving all of these, conflicts and turmoils, having different people take care of her. Really cool. Judith, spoiler alert, is not alive in the comics, which I disagree with, but it's really cool that she's alive in the show. She's a big wild card, and I never know what they're going to do with her, so it's interesting that she's still alive. So I think Judith and Carl will be they're the keys to the future. They're the youngest generation. Same thing with Maggie's baby. They're the youngest kids we know about, other than Enid and some people that are like teens or whatever. But they're the only young generation. We've had other younglings, but they've been killed off, like Sam and Ron. Some of them have suffered deaths. So the future will be in the younglings. Rick is obviously our main character. I have no reason to think he's not going to be our main character. He's still alive in the comics as of issue 169, 170. He's still in the show as of season 8. I think that I would kind of be turned off from the show a little bit. If Negan or Rick were killed off, it would be a struggle for me to keep watching the show, because those two characters are the biggest reasons, one of the biggest reasons why I watch the show. They're my two favorite characters, two characters that are very similar but also very different, and I like the butting of heads between them, whether they're on the same side or whether they're fighting each other. It's very interesting, and I love it. I think the government has to be brought into the picture at some point. I think it was interesting in season 1 when we had the prospect of the CDC, of maybe some people survived, maybe they're working on a cure. I don't think Kirkman wants to go down the route of a cure like World War Z or something. I really think that he wants this just to be about survival. But I think bringing the government, if there's any government left, it might be interesting. Now, I'll bring up another spoiler because it is necessary to talk about this. Eugene in the comic books, after Negan is defeated, Eugene begins to talk on a radio with a group that's from Ohio. Now, they haven't revealed themselves to be from the government, but I think that it would be a logical step. For this group to be different than any of the groups that we've seen before, I think them having some sort of governmental tie would be interesting. I don't know how you would tie that into the story, but I think that the government being underground and working, or maybe it's an independent faction, they no longer represent the United States. It's almost like Fallout, where it's the Enclave. Now that civilization in America has fallen, now that they're their own entity after the world has ended, technically. So this would be like a government after the world has ended. So it would be interesting for Rick to maybe politically clash with them, or to see how ideologies match up. We see a little bit of that with Deanna, her trying to get civilization back to normal kind of thing, and how Rick kind of clashes with her about how brutal the world is now. So we've seen a little bit of that, but I think on a larger scale it would be interesting to see the government come into play. So far we've only moved from Georgia to Virginia. They're in Virginia now, both in the comics and the show. Will they move to another state? Possibly Ohio? We don't know. Fear the Walking Dead has been covering Mexico, California, the West Coasty area. So, lots of possibilities to explore locations. There's probably no travel available for them to go to other countries. I think it'll stay on American soil. The show is still filmed in Georgia, even though they say that it's in Virginia, just in case any of you guys knew that. No matter where they go, they'll always still shoot in Georgia. For example, the scene in The Walking Dead where they defuse the dynamite on the highway, that's the same highway in Season 2 where Sophia went missing. So that's just a fun fact. So they still film in Georgia even though the show's in Virginia. So, yeah, I do think, again, I think Rick Grimes will die at the end. I think some government semblance has to come into it. And there should be some sort of end goal that comes into play. I feel like eventually you'll get to the point where the dynamics between the characters will get a little drawn out, all right? If Kirkman can keep coming up with new material, fine, but as long as it doesn't feel stagnant. I don't want a Negan 2.0. I don't want another Negan where it's like, oh, here's a bigger bad guy that has a bigger army and Rick has to take him down. Like, I don't want villains to be duplicated. I don't want the Governor 2.0, like a psychopath. I don't want a Negan 2.0, maybe a charismatic psychopath. the villain that comes after Negan, Alpha, is savage, very savage, almost acts like she is a walker. And that's different. That's new. So the Whisperers, the group that comes after Negan, a very different kind of group than we're used to. They wear zombie skin and almost live among zombies. So this is going completely backwards, backwards even from the cannibals of Terminus. So this is something different. And again, that's another thing. We've seen different groups, cannibals in Terminus, Psychopath and the Governor, Charismatic Negan. Different villains and different conflicts keep the show churning. And also different types of zombies, I will say that. The Oceanside zombies with the seaweed and stuff was interesting. Winslow, the zombie with the armor and the blades sticking out of its core and stomach, that was interesting. I like that. Keep that kind of content coming. Like I said, you will get to a point where sometimes it might seem like all the ideas are taken. Like they had a tank in Season 4 and RPG, and so they've used different fantasy fiction elements of war and conflict to add interest to this desolate, isolated world of The Walking Dead. But again, make it intriguing and don't leave people stagnant with the same material. That's how I think the show will continue until it eventually hits an end where it's basically Rick and very few people left remaining, or maybe Rick has left Civilization. He lets Civilization thrive, he leaves Carl or Judith in charge, and then he abdicates and goes off like a missionary monk, or he just gets old and dies. I don't know. Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick Grimes, has joked about maybe he's immune and he's the cure. That would be cliche. There's many movies and TV shows about zombies that have said that, like, oh, everyone's infected, but at the end you realize the main character's not infected. Again, Kirkman has tried to stay away from what the zombie virus is. However, if you were to end the show completely, I don't think maybe it's a bad idea to talk about that. Talk about the zombie virus, maybe. What is it? How did it happen? Maybe, here's an idea, I don't want anyone stealing this, and I will go back to this video, but maybe Rick Grimes comes in contact with the guy that started the virus. Maybe this was a terrorist attack. Maybe somebody was trying to weaken Civilization so that they could take over. This was always an idea I had for The Walking Dead, that maybe the zombie virus was something that someone set loose on humanity so that they could rise from the ashes and take over, so that humanity was weak enough so that they could take over. I don't know. It's just an interesting concept. I think if there was a twist on what the virus was, like, I don't want it to be something like, oh, some strain of Ebola or something got loose and it got rampant, no one could control it, and then it just got rampant and destroyed Civilization. Or maybe something, like I said, I was throwing out some ideas, but maybe they were trying to make some super soldiers, kind of like Fallout with the super mutants. They're trying to make super soldiers, and the program went completely crazy and it didn't work. Something interesting. I think if the show ends with that, because back in Season 1, we had a little bit of that with the CDC. Granted, Frank Darabont was the director and was doing some of that content. Now that he's not in charge, I don't know if Gimple wants to talk about that kind of stuff. But we have had hints of it, like with Eugene, when there was a possibility that he knew what the virus was and how to stop it. We learned only a few episodes later that was bullshit. But I still think that concept's intriguing. If we ever get back to how did the virus start, how can we stop it, maybe it will take Rick to regain Civilization, then figure out what the virus is. So that's where I see the different directions the show going. Those are my suggestions. If you have any suggestions or thoughts of your own, leave them in the comments below. I will definitely take a look and respond when I have a chance. So thank you guys for watching. These are kind of all the ideas I can really come up with. But again, if you have any, let me know. So thank you guys for watching. Peace out. See you later. I'm trying to upload this video tonight. So if you see tomorrow, technically Tuesday, I'm going to try to upload, or tomorrow's Monday, but the day after I'll have a Better Call Saul Season 3 finale reaction. I'm going to try to do a reaction video with my brother, who I've been watching the series with. And Season 3 has been amazing, and I want to do a reaction video to it. I feel like a lot of shit's going to go down, and it's worth reacting to. There are some Better Call Saul episodes where there's not much happens and there's not much to react to, but I feel like this finale, there will be. And especially considering the show won't be on until the spring of 2018, so there's going to be a bit of a wait. So this is my last chance to enjoy Saul, so I'm going to do that. So anyway, Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.